It appears I am now live. So, this is a preview. This will come up in a Hangouts soon. Right. But I'm going to be going over a few things. So, this is in contrast. So, you see here, this is about where you actually have definitions which are opposed. So, immersing yourself in the present context versus alternatives. They are necessarily opposed. But what about thinking and feeling? The reason why I bring this up is that when something is opposed, it necessarily has to be suppressed. But what about thinking and feeling? This is the current thinking about the relationship between thinking and feeling. There is a feedback mechanism going on here. The way you think about your feelings can make them worse. Look at the Enneagram Type 6. Look, what does the 7 do? I resemble the 7. The 7, if they're feeling bad, can reframe the situation to feel better. Now then, it is my contention that, what have I called this event? Oh, it doesn't list what it's called. Right. It's that there is a difference between opposites and sometimes opposed. So, somebody's thinking can be in line with their feelings. So, you can have an INFP resembler. Let's go into the stereotypes here. They can have their thinking based on the premise that the most important value is, say, fairness, and they want a society which is all about fairness. So, for example, and they can even reach a conclusion where everybody is equally poor, as long as it's fair. But but you see there, the thinking is in line with the feeling. You can have another INFP resembler who they might have a feeling that wouldn't it be great if everybody was paid the same? But this INFP might be then thinking, and then this is an example where it would be opposed. They might think, hang on a minute, if everybody was paid the same, then people might try to do the easier work because they're getting paid the same. And there's not the price signals there to do supply and demand, because this INFP resembler might have read up there, and you actually get this in most INFPs as they mature. They get this conflict between how they would like the world to be, how they feel, and how it actually is through reason. But most of the time, thinking and feeling are not opposed. And another thing that idealists want is they want, there's a thing in NLP called ecology, where you have, it's not coherence, I forgot what it's called. You've also got cognitive dissonance, which can happen. I've forgotten the term. Am I going to pause here whilst I think of the term? Congruent. They want authenticity, and they will have congruence between their thoughts and their feelings. And when somebody is conflicted. Sorry, but most of the time, you're not going to get this conflict. So you can have something like this, where someone can feel it's the right thing to be nice to other people, but then somebody else could think Oh, it works better in they might logically have worked it out from experience. Hey, if I'm nice to other people, I'll get a good reputation, and if I'm nice to them, they'll be nice back to me. So you can get the same conclusion there, but they're supposed to be opposed. So they're not opposed. Thinking and feeling are not necessarily opposed. Therefore, they are not necessarily opposites. Whereas NE and SE are opposites in the way they are conceived. And this is the thing. Thinking and feeling are not conceived, whereas these are conceived as opposites. So this tells you something about the fundamentals of typology and the premises that we're based on. So now I'm going to do a little bit, I'm not going to really zoom in on this. Well, I am going to do it there. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a preview because I'm going to do an event with Mitchell, who knows quite a bit, and I'm going to compare the presuppositions of classical socionics with the presuppositions of Keirsey. Now, hopefully I've added it in here. Right. So then, I will assert these Keirsey intellects are real. They are real. Expediency is real. Logistical safekeeping is real. Diplomacy is real. These come through in predisposed roles. You know, these are real. So, now then, if we then start to think about, just a little preview, if we then start to think about how we define our functions, I am fed up of people not defining the functions properly. It is ridiculous. So, if you're defining the functions, you need to get them as opposites, get them to work in all 8 positions. That's the TI point of view, or rather, that's an aspect of TI, because really, TI is subjective thinking. And all the structural logic is a side effect of that, because you start with a subjective premise, such as, I'm going to define it like this, and then you work it out through the subject, through the structure to see if it works. So, here. If we then say logistical safekeeping is SI with TE, and the way these functions are expressed is affected by the temperament, then we start looking at this and looking at this. Mentoring, directive role, NI with FE. And SE, that's consistent with a directive nature. And then these other things. Coordinating resources towards long-term objectives, TE with NI. Constructing systems and designs, NE with TI. Expediting, SE with TI. Improvising, SE with FI. This is consistent. So, if you define the functions the way Keirsey, the way Nardi and Behrens do, and those definitions are consistent with the empirical Keirsey intellects, let's go with that. Because these, what we can say, are just shorthands for something which is real. Right. For sensorics, isn't that a little bit offensive to reduce a function to just brute force? That's offensive. It's not showing the positive side of it. So if you were to teach that to children, oh, you're an SE ego type, so you're brute force influence. I shouldn't have put ignorance in that. That's not right. But it's not good. It's not positive role. Keirsey was very good for the artisans. Somebody asked him, he wrote in his Please Understand Me Too, somebody asked him, why do you keep talking about artisans? Because he said, because I think I can help them more than anybody else. Right, here we go. Fundamentals. 8 cognitive processes being classified by metaphysics. Okay. What if, say, David Mark Keirsey came up with 8 different kinds of information based on three dichotomies? What about systems theory? Which systems theory in Gestalt and systems theory, it's about elementals, it's about emergent order. There are some premises in Keirsey. Dichotomous versus distribution. Now, what they might say is, he might say, yes, it probably is a distribution, but in actuality, once you sort of pick one side and the other, you end up practicing it, and then you go more in that direction. Also, the thing is with word usage, there's a way of looking at it in a superficial way, and there's a way of looking at it in a more nuanced way. The superficial way would be to say, someone's words are abstract, someone's words are concrete. The more nuanced way is, in which circumstances are they using abstract word usage or concrete word usage? Have you got a sensing type talking about socionics, such as Damon Gray, i.e. Chad Crandall? Or when do they default to this? Are they using those concepts as a tool rather than for their own sake? And then also, there's the words associated with functions and other things, and what is the abstract speech like in NTs? Is it factorial, analytic, and deductive? So you can get a lot about words, and that's just the premise that the way someone talks is related to the way they think. That's not that much of a leap. So we can observe words, and we can hear words. And we can also see how people use tools. Are there any other actions? I mean, you could even argue that the way the body is, I mean, body language, I suppose. I mean, that's a non-linguistic, well, actually sign language is linguistic because you've got grammar. So, what's more empirical? Keirsey. Well, there. And then you've got Keirsey, Nardi Berens. And also, their definitions of the functions, not only are they consistent with these empirical strategic intellects, no, not strategic intellects, Keirsey intellects. It's early in the morning. Like I said, JSF correlates. So functional shorthands for this. NI with TE, coordinator. I mean, FE with NI, is that not mentoring? Guiding other people. You see where the goal is. You've got a valued SE as well. What else? I'm going to go through some of these slides as a preview to this thing. I'm going to go through this. And we're going to go through something else with the definitions. So Victor uses behavioral units. He does not use metaphysical definitions. So these metaphysical definitions are valid. They're not, you don't know that they're sound. People mistake that. They don't understand that. Right. Here we go. Can this, I'll leave that on. Is that going to go? Could that thing go at the top? Put a request in. There we go. Right, you can read all that. I mean, I assume he's being disingenuous. But you might actually believe what he says. Yeah. A metaphor from physics that folks take literally. So, for instance, I'm going to go through them all. Well, and I was going to do this at the time, but I'll do it now. Right, I'm going to put my hands in front of my eyes and show that I've remembered all this nonsense. Right, what have we got here? SE, external statics of objects. SI, oh dear, I'll do all the extroverted ones first. NE, internal statics of objects. FE, internal dynamics of objects. TE, external dynamics of objects. SI, external dynamics of fields. Ni, internal dynamics of fields. Fi, internal statics of fields. Ti, external statics of fields. Right, that's just to prove that I remembered all this nonsense. So it's internally consistent, but who really believes in those abstractified definitions? Right, SE is external statics of objects. Right, so they are valid. But do you really think those are the actual things? The actual way the functions work? It's not the way the brain works. Right, here. There we go. I like how Jung separates the two out. It also means, by doing it like this, you can have an FI DOM with stronger reasoning power than, say, a TI DOM. But most of the time, TI DOMs will have stronger reasoning power than FI DOMs because of practice, because it's what they rely on. More so than, say, TE DOMs, because they're not because PI DOMs rely on it. They rely on reasoning power because they're going with speculative premises, and then they reason it through to see how it works. So they're always thinking it through and thinking about things. So the preference is to practice. Practice leads to skill in that area, and they also get interested in certain things. But you are going to have outliers where you're going to have a feeling type that is more intelligent than the average INTP resembler, strategic accommodator. So